Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm super excited about this panel today. I think it's one of those topics that probably gets the lowest ratio of Twitter mentions to sort of how important this topic really is to sort of our future, right? And so be able to sort of bring this to some prominent light, I think, is really important for us. The way I like to start these is just a quick introduction of yourself and your project, 1 minute each. Maybe you can go in order in terms of highest price target for Bitcoin. No, just kidding. It's not that type of panel. And why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Data's cool too, so there should be more Twitter mentions. My name's Ann Fauvre, and I'm the CEO at Oasis Labs. Oasis Labs was an early contributor to a decentralized proof-of-stake network called the Oasis Network, and our primary focus is to build a privacy-first network. There's a number of things you can do with the network, but one of the things we'll spend most of the time talking about today is how we think about data privacy and how we think about enterprise networks using our network as well, particularly around data permissioning and the power the blockchain can really do and can unlock when combined with privacy for big data monopolies.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Wolff with Streamr. Streamr is a network for peer-to-peer distribution of data streams and a marketplace to buy and sell data streams, and also tools like data unions, which I was involved in, to efficiently split revenue so people can pool data together and sell products. Yeah.
Well, I'm Doug Petkanic. I'm the founder of Livepeer. We're the video streaming layer in the Web3 stack. We've been live for about 3.5 years.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Napheys. While I'm sure Ton Labs is a great team, I'm actually with Ocean Protocol, and I'm the community and growth lead for OceanDAO. OceanDAO is a path toward long-term growth and self-sustainability of the Ocean Protocol, and Ocean is a protocol that unlocks data for the future of the Web3 data economy.
Awesome. So the topic of this panel is really unbundling monopolies, right? And when we think about monopolies, they're not totally useless, right? I mean, they help drive the market forward. They make things a lot cheaper through efficiencies of scale. It's a lot easier to make decisions when you've got a monopoly. So why is it important for us to decentralize data monopolies? And why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest, so I guess the first thing I'll say is before working at Oasis, I worked at Apple. And I think Apple's a really good example here because they're a company that from its core, and I truly believe this, authentically believes in data privacy and consumer privacy. But I think they've also shown, actually quite recently, that they're going to make decisions about what that means. And so centralizing data monopolies essentially means you're giving someone else some judgment or decision-making power to make the decisions about how they use your data and how they use other people's data themselves. You may think that, and I authentically believe Apple is a very good actor here, but they're still the decider, and they're still the one that has the ability to move around and change and at some point, if they change their mind, monetize that data. And so I think at the core, and really the reason I came to Oasis and have worked on it for so long is I just strongly believe that we as individuals need to be able to be given and gain more power back on how our data is used, accessed, and ultimately monetized. And as good as big companies are or tend to be, their incentives are never going to be fully aligned with us as an individual. And so we need to find a way to decentralize that so that incentives are more aligned with individual user needs and wants.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And Doug, you're seeing a lot of activity happening now on Livepeer. Tell us about the kinds of users that are sort of buying into this philosophy of, hey, I want something decentralized. Why are they looking to Livepeer versus, say, other options?
Yeah, I think it ties into the data monopoly question, actually. So working in video streaming, one thing you see is that the creator economy is really happening right now. Like, creators are super empowered to connect directly to their users, to have better economic interactions with their users in the platforms. But in video, because it's so kind of expensive and difficult to perform and you need a big infrastructure, everyone's kind of forced into these video streaming platforms owned by Google and Amazon, which are YouTube and Twitch, right? And what we're seeing is people actually want to unbundle from those. They want to create experiences where they can have better economic relationships with their users. But because video infrastructure is so challenging, they have no choice but to build these on Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud, the same infrastructure providers who own the social platforms with the data monopolies. And so at Livepeer, we're seeing, oh, there's a decentralized video infrastructure. There's an alternative that's 10 times more cost effective. And it's really these creator economy apps where they're letting the long tail of hundreds or thousands of users stream for free or at low cost initially, that are flocking to these open, decentralized platforms. And I think it's going to be really powerful when you start to combine, NFTs and crypto token monetization, and we see the new wave of Web3 apps.
Yeah, definitely. When we talk about the data economy, right, I think the role of a centralized business oftentimes is to just bring together supply and demand, right? It's that classic marketplace problem, right? And a lot of you guys are working on bringing that marketplace together. So when you think about this data marketplace and sort of this classic problem of how do you bootstrap it, the supply side, the demand side, what are the ways that you're working on to make that happen? Alex, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, this is a super interesting problem to solve because it's not like your classic Web 2 marketplace playbook that you just run the traction script and just see where you get some product market fit and just put your marketing spend on that lever. In the Web3 data economy, specifically with Ocean, these are permissionless open platforms. So you need to allow anyone to be able to come and join this side of the marketplace they want to participate on, and that permissionless is the core of the Web3 DWeb primitive stack. That's like what how you get people to get onboarded. And we have three main actors in the Ocean marketplace. So you have the people who are actually supplying the data. You have the people who can actually stake on data to, if they are aligned with that data, they can buy it and provide liquidity to that data set. And then the developers itself, so people who want to build on the Ocean marketplace. So across these three things, these are the core kind of actors who can evangelize and go out and spread the two-sided marketplace to the people. And this is the supply side allows for any arbitrary data set to be created. So these could be things like weather data or Amazon e-commerce seller data or autonomous car driver data. So we have people on board already, whether that's a carbon credit data set or healthcare data. And just in our first month of operation, we've had back in Q4 last year, 60,000 transactions, 335,000 unique visitors to the platform, and just over 200 data sets on the platform itself. So this traction is there, the excitement's there, and this kind of getting that flywheel going of those network effects across those actors is it's a tricky problem to solve, but incentivizing folks in your network is they respond to it.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely come back to that staking and incentivizing part a little bit more, especially when we talk about DeFi and sort of its place in Web3, because I think that is a really interesting sort of coming together of two big trends, right? But just to finish off sort of the marketplace challenge here, I know, Jonathan, Streamr has a pretty unique approach here with data unions. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Actually, wrote the contracts for data unions, so I can speak extensively on that subject. Yeah, data unions allow many people to pool their data together, and when the data is purchased, it has a clever accounting tricks so that one transaction can pay many people, and it enables micropayments, and these people will then pay for the withdrawal themselves once they've accrued enough to make it worthwhile. And I think micropayments are a very important part of incentivizing, because so much of what we like, things like building a decentralized Facebook, for example, like we need to incentivize people to pay for this, and it has to be paid for in some way. These services actually cost money. So data unions is one step towards that, where it allows people to monetize small amounts of data.
So monetization. So let's talk about that, right? Because the other thing that monopolies are really good at is just making a lot of money. So AWS, they make what, $5 billion a month, right? So in Web3, what does that start to look like? What is the revenue model? What are we seeing? What are we hoping to see here? How close do you think that can get? And from just sort of the user perspective or the enterprise perspective, what are they going to be paying for? So, Doug, I know you've been doing a little bit of work on that. Can you tell us a bit about sort of the revenues and monetization you're seeing?
Yeah, so we actually just collaborated with 5 other great Web3 projects to launch something today, web3index.org, that showcases the amount of revenue that these Web3 protocols are making. And it's still a small drop in the bucket compared to AWS, but I think what we're seeing is a few $100,000 a month for a non-trivial number across kind of a base, a couple storage projects, Arweave and Filecoin, video streaming project, Livepeer, Akash for servers, and I know other projects up on this stage, some are working on adding integrations, and we'll start to showcase a growing usage and adoption. It's worth pointing out, though, one of the superpowers of Web3 when it comes to bootstrapping marketplaces is you can actually use these crypto assets and these tokens to bootstrap the supply side of your marketplace, and they can actually earn some revenue through this inflationary token and speculation. That means they can charge lower prices for the actual service. So, streaming a video on Livepeer is cheaper than it would be to stream it on Amazon because the people doing the work are also kind of speculating on earning new token alongside the fee that you're paying. That's really powerful. And so when you see, $1 million in revenue across Web3, well, maybe that's 10 times cheaper than it would cost in Web 2, but those node operators are still in these early days kind of participating in that upside value.
Totally. And I guess for the Oasis ecosystem, are you seeing anything interesting in terms of business models?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think similar things, I think, to what you're seeing. I mean, I think, so we tested, I'll state that the way our network's designed is we have a decentralized consensus layer and then a number of paratimes, which are essentially different compute layers. And the one that we're really thinking about for data management and data privacy is called Parcel. And so it's designed really to look to a developer like a Web 2 environment where they can interact with it like they would any sort of API product. And what's interesting is we've actually spent a lot of time testing out different monetization models. And I think at first, maybe, frankly, like uncreatively, we were like, oh, let's look at what Stripe's doing. Let's see if we can do something like that where, it's per API ping. We'll see if we can add some sort of value-based pricing on top of this. That'd be really interesting. But what we quickly realized is this is not Web 2, and that's really lazy. And there's a lot more that we can do that's also much more compelling that brings developers really into the ecosystem, not only as users, but as members of your community. And so what we found is, as we went out and talked to many of our early developers who are just Web 2 businesses who want to have better data management and ownership, they wanted some ability to engage with the network. They wanted an ability to have, think of it as like a revenue share or some ability to engage with the token and to be able to benefit from the ecosystem as a whole. And so it really shifted our focus in terms of how we think about revenue and pricing for those services as there's probably some bar you want to, some minimum bar, so there's not, just a mass, you have people coming who really don't want the service but are avoiding paying anything, right? But really what you're trying to think about is what are the models you can do that allow people beyond that minimum bar to feel like they're going to be able to monetize what they're doing. And so we actually ended up adding this additional feature which we call data tokenization, but is the ability to actually create a token themselves represented by that data, almost like a NFT of data in some ways. And that token is actually something then that they can use to to monetize themselves and create additional stream of revenue for themselves, or to pass that along to their users at the end of the day. So there's some flexibility there. We're certainly still testing it out. It's early days, but I think that was really, for us, really encouraging to see that these developers too, in some ways they were willing to pay more upfront to be a part of the ecosystem and to see how they could actually use these tokens as well as Rose, our network token, to engage more in the network as a whole itself. So it was very cool to see, and I think just an early sign that Web3 is very different. We're all owners. We're not just users of networks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the big unlocks with Web3 is the financialization of data, right? In a way that is open, but also that allows sort of this economy to work, right? And I think that's a super essential piece of it. The other thing you mentioned is participation, right? That people become sort of co-owners or part owners of the protocol itself. But that leads me to another question, I guess, which is that, monopolies, we were talking about it before, it's this really streamlined decision-making process, whereas I think in Web3, you've got this concept of DAOs and decentralized decision-making, right? So I guess give us an idea of the types of decisions, right, that users will be a part of. Maybe Jonathan, you've been thinking about this quite a bit. What does that look like in terms of a DAO?
I mean, I would like to see DAOs used for all types of governmental processes too. I mean, I think blockchain voting is simply a better voting mechanism. And with zero knowledge proofs, it's possible also to vote on chain and keep your vote secret and have the correct total at the end. So, I mean, I can't think of a better voting mechanism than on-chain voting. And especially now in this time where there's so much skepticism about, election security. So, I mean, personally, DAOs and on-chain voting was the thing that got me interested in blockchain, really. Yep.
That's awesome. So I guess when we think about the data marketplace, for example, what are the types of decisions that I as a voter might be voting on? Would it be how much to charge for the data? Would it be who I allow or who the protocol allows to kind of integrate? What kind of decisions I think are part of this DAO governance process?
How much to charge for the data is the obvious one. I don't know that it's permissioned. I don't know. Streamr has they're splitting off data unions into a union DAO where the contributors can make these kind of decisions. But I don't know that it's permissioned and that they approve people to buy and sell streams. I think it's more things like how much to charge and possibly like details of the data itself.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see like a grants process being part of that,
yes,
that too, right? Sort of the constant research and development function that these monopolistic sort of giants are doing with their excess cash, that needs to happen somewhere else in Web3, right? And I think the community can probably decide or have a role in deciding sort of where those R&D dollars are going that are spinning off of the users that are participating. I guess this brings me back to sort of the financial talk. So I think we've seen DeFi mechanisms really start to play a role in Web3, right? Whether it's Ocean Protocol using Balancer, or just this thought of data now being treated as an asset. So maybe Alex, can you tell me a bit about, I guess, two parts of this question. So one is, how has DeFi unlocked certain things for the Ocean ecosystem? And then the other is, how does Web3 unlock further sort of innovation in DeFi?
Yeah, so this is solved through, in the Ocean mechanism, what we call IDOs, or initial data offering. So the whole premise is you can, on the supply side, you come and you launch a data market, and with that, you issue these data tokens. And if you have if you buy some data tokens, that allows you to get access to all future cash flows of that data set, and allows you to capture that upside of the if you think it's going to get some traction, you have skin in the game with that data set. So how we do this is through the AMM on Balancer. So Ocean Market runs on Balancer proxy contracts. This is super incredible tech where it's self-weighted. So you can, instead of 50-50 splits on like Uniswap or something, you can come and set how much your pool is weighted on. So this can be a percentage of Ocean token and then that data set token. So your actual consumers of the data set now have skin in the game with the data set. This is, really a really powerful mechanism, and allows your consumers to also be evangelists for that data set. To, are there any other ML practitioners or people who want to actually find that data useful to come and consume it? And what's really interesting is the datization allows you to in the Web3 lens, allows you to use all the existing DeFi rails. So your MetaMask wallet is now a data wallet, because the data tokens are ERC20s in and of themselves. And in the lens of how does this expand into across all of Web3, coming down the pipeline in Q4 of this year is going to be the NFTization of the actual base IP itself. So you come and are providing a data set. Well, you can actually go and move that data set around in that NFT to other places where it can be revenue generating even before your initial data offering.
Super interesting. So I guess this touches upon another big trend that's kind of colliding with Web3 now, which is NFTs, right? I mean, obviously starting with sort of the content and the art side of NFTs to begin with. But it seems pretty clear to me now that NFTs have justified, I think, the need for Web3 infrastructure, right? I mean, whether it's sort of the persistent content that needs to be able to be attached to an NFT in order for it to have value, it being stored someplace on IPFS or Arweave rather than on AWS. I guess for Anne, I see that your profile picture on Twitter looks a bit like a CryptoPunk. Tell me a bit about sort of how you see the role that Oasis can play in the growth of NFTs.
Yeah. I mean, first I'd say I'm just a big NFT fan in general. On the most superficial level, like I'm a sneakerhead, so I feel like there's a similarity there. So my Twitter profile is something called I think it's like a pixel me, but it's like supposed to be like me, so it's great. It's worth a lot. But no, I'd say like more generally, I think obviously what we're seeing in the first phase of NFTs is this like real mass production of really cool art, and this model that's really turned creator ownership on its head, ownership of art on its head in a really cool way. I think tying that now to what we're seeing with data, there's this really interesting way that, I think Alex touched on a little bit already, but about how data can be made into an NFT as well. And so where I see like the most compelling place for a place like Oasis is really offering a home for this type of data NFT. And so I'll speak for just a minute of like why that's actually valuable. So I think at its base level, when you think about an NFT, to some extent it's just a unique key. It's just like a unique representative of something. And so in many ways, the idea of owning your data, being able to decide who has access to it, who can monetize it, who can fractionalize it, it's actually very similar in structure to how an NFT is designed. And so we've added this thing called data tokens, which I think are actually similar to the way Ocean's thought about it, but it's essentially a tokenization of your data that then you can choose to monetize as you want, store as you want. And so we've started to experiment a little bit about this. We had a developer that tokenized a genome on our network. And so I think there's some really compelling things here where they give you the ability to both show proof of an ownership of really sensitive data while maintaining control of who accesses it. I'd say our special additional secret or sauce here is that we add confidentiality and privacy. So it can specifically be used for more sensitive pieces of data, like your genome, like healthcare data, where you may not actually want people to have access to that information openly, but you want to be able to hold it in some unique way and then decide who does, and they can decrypt it and very specifically. So yeah, I think there's a huge place for the intersection of data and NFTs, and just very early days there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when you're talking about access, it sort of sparks something with me around kind of censorship, right? I mean, one thing that has really come up in all sorts of ways over the past year is just how social media platforms are essentially centralized entities for distributing information, right? And the decisions that they have to make on what they allow or don't allow. So, Web3 seems like it would have a pretty clear application in social media. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on sort of social media evolving into a more decentralized fashion?
I've been thinking about this for years. I mean, people don't explicitly pay for their social media. I think there's kind of an attitude adjustment that has to happen where people think that it's actually free when it's not free. And in reality, obviously, Facebook is selling your data and enriching, its founders. But instead, you can sell your own data, and that would, and that would pay for the servers. And there are a number of components, obviously, that are necessary to run a decentralized Facebook, right? I mean, one component is like the peer-to-peer network for distributing the pub subsystem for pushing messages. I mean, Streamr is one little component of that, but there's also things like what Akash does, where it's like decentralized AWS. But all these things have to be paid for, and I think people are used to thinking that it's free when it's not free, and I think there's sort of an attitude. I mean, that's been the great fallacy of Web 2, I think, and it's had a lot of negative social consequences. The fact that your ISP is selling your data, Facebook is selling all your data, and obviously there's been a loss of like privacy, and people feel like they're kind of like losing control of their own data. So I think first people have to get in the habit of paying for the services they use. Micropayments, not huge payments, but it costs money. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So I guess that takes us to sort of the close of this session, which I think I'd love to end on something sort of hopeful, and ask each of you, what are you most hopeful for? Whether it's related to your project or the broader industry and ecosystem overall. Not just that, but if you could hope for this audience, both here and virtually, to invest their time, their capital into something, what would it be? Alex, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I would assume all of us would agree on this, that data is the new oil, and embracing your self-sovereignty over your own data and being able to leverage that in whatever Web3 primitive way is really empowering, and it's a new asset class. And secondarily, with all these communities, they are internet communities. They are trending towards DAO models. So it's not just about speculation or utility anymore. It's actually about active participation. So getting involved in your local internet community as well.
Doug, what about you?
Yeah, I think after 5 hard years in the trenches, like Web3 infrastructure is here at the same time that DAO tooling is here, at the same time that like NFT-based monetization is here, and like the combination of these things being like, now it's time for the killer apps to emerge. So I'm like really excited for the next year.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned it. I'm excited about decentralized social networks. I think that's really exciting. I think the internet, I remember I was a teenager in the 90s. I remember all the promise that it held, and also the hysteria around cryptography and where it would go. And I think in the 2000s we kind of went in the wrong direction, especially with the centralization of all these services, and especially with social media, where it got really insane, where people are unwittingly selling their entire lives to these companies. But I think we can really rid ourselves from that, and I think that it's here, and it's 5-10 years away or something, hopefully sooner. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll echo what a lot of you guys have said. I think we're at the golden age of crypto, and it's just started. I think it's like, I'm really excited for the next few years because it feels like so many things are just coming together right now. On the enterprise side, I think we're seeing this a lot, where a lot of companies that are more traditional, and maybe not even big technical players like healthcare companies, are actually seeing the value of what a blockchain can provide, especially for their data. And seeing that and having companies come to you not only because they want to learn about blockchains, but because they actually have value props that they realize they can only do on decentralized networks is incredibly powerful. And on the consumer side, I think with the rise of things like NFTs, we're seeing like actual things that like normal people can participate in and get excited about. And that makes me just like really thrilled to be in the space after, as Doug said, like after many years in the trenches, it's nice to see the fruits of all of our labor beginning to show itself more publicly.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for a great discussion here. I would say that you can find us on Twitter, but I'm not sure this is the right panel to promote Twitter on. But anyways, if you do want to, you can do that. So
You can.
thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Franklin.
you.
Thank you.